Story 1. I, 40-year-old female, have worked in retail and customer service for most of my life. Not to brag, but I'm pretty good at it. I have a fair number of customers who've followed me to another store when I got transferred. For the last 15 years, I've worked as a florist and department manager for a large grocery company, and overall, I love my job. Sure, there are unpleasant people, but having folks come in and tell me how much their loved one appreciated their flowers and how I made their day makes up for it. And then there's this one particularly difficult customer. He first came in a couple of years ago, on December 23rd or 24. I had my assistant on the register while I was on the floor, trying to stock products quickly and help customers. This miserable-looking older man approached me before I could even say hello. I had my arms full of flowers, and he said, "I want Christmas flowers." "Sure, we have red flowers right here, and white and green to my left. If you pick out what you like, my assistant will be happy to put them together for you. If you want something already arranged, there are pre-made bouquets a little bit further down." He gave me a look and sighed loudly. I said, "I want Christmas flowers. If you need help picking things out, just give me a minute here and He took a step toward me and snapped, "Put down what's in your hands and help me." Normally, I just put on a smile and use my customer service voice. But after the verbal mistreatment we'd all endured during the pandemic, I had reached my limit. I looked him straight in the eye and calmly said, "No, you can talk to me with respect, or I'm not going to help you." He started to raise his voice again, but I turned away and kept putting the flowers away. He tried to argue with me, but another customer swooped in like a glorious angel and pulled me aside to ask for help. I told my store manager, who instructed me to page him the next time I saw the man. I did, and my manager said he spoke to the man probably something like, "Please be nice." My assistant and the department manager who were there before me both said they'd had issues with this customer being disrespectful in the past, and unfortunately, nothing had ever been done about it. A month or so ago, the same man returned. It had been a while since I'd seen him, so I didn't recognize him right away. I greeted him and was finishing up an order for delivery at my counter. I told him I'd be right with him. He asked if the flowers were fresh, and I told him that most had arrived the day before. I had looked down for about 30 seconds to finish something we usually have to work alone because we're never given extra hours. So sometimes we're juggling multiple tasks at once. Most customers, especially regulars, understand that. When I looked up, this man was glaring at me. "I'm sorry, did you need help with something?" He rolled his eyes and very sarcastically replied, "Yeah." I started to come out from behind the counter to see what he needed and asked, "What can I help you with?" He snapped, "Pick something for me." And then it clicked. "Sir, we've had this discussion before. If you can't be respectful, I'm not going to help you." He approached the counter and slammed his fist on it. I immediately took a step back so I was out of his reach. "I'm not being disrespectful," he insisted. "You are, and you're being aggressive now. I'd be happy to call my manager to come assist you, but I'm not going to help you until you can behave appropriately." It took everything I had to keep my voice steady. I could see a couple of the guys from the produce department nearby, but they weren't close enough to step in. He smacked his fist on the counter again and huffed, starting to storm off. "Shove it up your backside," he muttered. I put on my sweetest smile and chirped back, "You too, sir. Have a lovely day." He threw one last jab over his shoulder. "I don't even know why they keep you around." "Who knows, sir? Maybe a diversity hire," I replied with the same polite tone. As soon as he was gone, I went into the back room, and I was shaking. I wrote out a full statement and gave a copy to my manager and another to my union representative. I haven't seen him since. My boss's suggestion was to kill him with kindness, bless his heart. Sorry if this was long. I just found myself thinking about it all of a sudden and needed to get it off my chest. Story 2. Yesterday was a strange day, and I was a bit shaken. I'm not sure if I did my first act of malicious compliance or not. Please tell me if it wasn't. There's my company, and there's the other company, and both cooperate occasionally. In my company, I am one of 2 people who have a monthly ticket for trams and buses. The rest of the employees travel by cars. The other company is in the old city zone where only cars with an official permit can travel and park. So if my boss needs someone to go there, it is either my coworker or me. 2 days ago, he asked me because I was around while my colleague was on a lunch break. I was to deliver some documents. It is faster than hiring a courier because a courier must take a package to a warehouse where it is registered and then sent out. So it could take a whole day if a courier picks it up late. If my colleague or I go to the other company, it only takes 45 to 60 minutes. The way my boss explained, I was to go to the other company, and they set a time interval from 3 p.m. to 3:30 p.m., so I was to leave around 2 p.m. Everything was clear. My boss wrote an email when I was leaving, so they knew when I was to arrive. They confirmed, and everything was set. I arrived just after 3 p.m. I was supposed to leave the package, but I couldn't. Their lady manager was supposed to check it and then notify my boss if any documents were missing. So where was she? I missed her by a whole 5 to 10 minutes. I had to wait for her because not one person in the other company knew which documents were in the package. But it's all good. She'll be back in 15 minutes. I shouldn't worry and shouldn't tell my boss. That part was weird. So I grabbed my phone, wrote a message saying, "There's a misunderstanding," sending an email, and then sent a detailed email with a description without blaming the other company. There must be a misunderstanding because, and here I put what they told me. The timestamp was 3:03 p.m., so I was definitely not late. What was even weirder was that my boss checked the reply from the lady manager, and she confirmed, not an employee, the lady in person. So I sat there, grabbed a book on my phone, and everything was perfectly fine. About 30 minutes later, my boss asked if I had delivered the documents. Still no lady manager around. I asked, and they weren't allowed to call her. But there was no need to notify my boss. They were sure she'd be there any minute. So I wrote another text, "No lady manager around," sending email, added a detailed description, including their statement they weren't allowed, and kept waiting. Another 30 minutes passed, and still no lady boss. My boss called them, and they pretty much repeated what they had been telling me. I added another email, "Boss, I listened to your conversation. They aren't happy, but I couldn't wait outside. They insisted I was not to wander around with the documents." I got a response, "Not a problem, do what they suggest and notify me immediately." So I kept waiting. They offered me a mineral water, which I declined. I wrote to my boss and got an email back. Close to 4:40 p.m., the lady manager barged in. She asked why I wasn't there earlier as they had decided. I grabbed my phone, read the timestamp, and read the email with the set conditions. She turned reddish-purple, took the package, and said I could go. I apologized and said I couldn't go. I was told repeatedly she was to check if any documents were missing. She insisted, so I wrote a text to my boss. She doesn't want to check documents, sending email. And I read the message. She was not happy, but finally decided to check the documents. I thanked her, waited for her email to my boss, and wrote another email immediately. I left only when my boss wrote back that she had really confirmed all the documents were in the package. Later, she contacted the owner and blamed us. It was my luck that I wrote all the emails so meticulously. When the owner called my boss all furious, it was easy to provide copies. My boss asked me today to come to his office and let me read the emails to and from the owner of the other company. There was a lawyer who explained that under normal circumstances, I wouldn't be allowed to read it. But the lady manager insisted we did something wrong, especially me. Since it was also about me, I was to read it even if I wasn't the recipient. They also asked me to print the emails directly from my email account, screenshots from my mobile, and write a detailed note from all of this, including timestamps from my emails, which I did. I don't know what it was. A weird power play. A way to discredit the other company. I don't even know if it was malicious compliance or not. Sorry. I don't think my boss or the lawyer will tell me more. Possibly if they try to sue, but why should they? Story 3. Greetings, friends. I have another round of stories, 2 involving rude customers, and 1 wholesome one this time, so buckle up for a ride full of frustrating encounters and a dash of kindness. This is going to be a wild one. Also, please excuse any spelling or grammar mistakes. I'm on my phone, and between autocorrect and the small keypad, my large thumbs are having a tough time. Story 1. This happened today. In my town, we have a Navy base, an Air Force base, and a National Guard base. Today, the Navy base decided it was the perfect day to practice touch and goes. For those who don't know, a touch and go is when a jet takes off, flies, turns around, approaches like it's going to land, briefly touches the landing strip, and then takes off again. They decided that the area above my store was the ideal spot to practice because it's near an airport. So, for 3 hours straight, every 30 minutes, a fighter jet would fly above the store. The loud whoosh they made rendered it nearly impossible to hear anyone's orders. I had to constantly say, "Hang on a second," and "Could you repeat that? I couldn't hear you over the jet." One of those moments came, and the following conversation happened. Me. Welcome to store name. How can I help you? Customer. Can I get jet flies by? So all I hear is a loud whoosh. Me. I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I couldn't hear you over the jet. Customer. Can I get jet comes around for another pass, so again, all I hear is whoosh. Me. I'm sorry, I still didn't catch that. The jet came by again. Customer yelling. Give me 2 double cheeseburgers, no onions. Goodness, if you can't hear, you shouldn't be at the window. Me. That'll be total. Please pull around. Customer pulls around to the window. Customer angrily. Why the heck did I have to repeat myself twice? Can you even hear? Oregon, are you just too clueless to listen? Me. I'm sorry. The jet came by twice, I couldn't hear you. Customer. If you can't hear over a jet, you shouldn't be taking orders. Now take my money so I can go. I took her money, gave her the change, and she drove off. Story 3. This is the wholesome one, folks. Ladies, get your awas ready. This story took place when I worked at another store around 2019. At the time, McDonald's and Disney were running a promotional event. They were including toys and paper Mickey and Minnie Mouse ear hats in Happy Meals for the kids. To help promote it, I wore the Mickey ears at work. I like to have fun while on the job, and I do a pretty solid Mickey Mouse voice, so I was using that to add to the experience. One day, as I was speaking in my Mickey voice, the headset beeped to let me know someone had pulled up to the drive-thru. The following conversation took place. Me accidentally using my Mickey voice. Hiya, pal. I realized what I had done and was about to switch back to my regular voice when I heard a tiny, excited voice from the car. Little voice. Mickey, Mommy, Mickey is working at McDonald's. Me in my Mickey voice. What can I get you today? Little voice. Mickey, I want a cheeseburger Happy Meal. I proceeded to take the entire order using my Mickey voice. They pulled around to the window, and the little boy saw me wearing the Mickey ears. Me. Hiya, pal. Little kid delighted. Now Mickey is going to take our money, Mommy. Me handing him a pair of Mickey ears and still using my Mickey voice. Here you go, pal. Now you can be Mickey too. They pulled away, and that was that, or so I thought. The next day, I was off work. When I came in on Monday, my manager pulled me aside. Manager, I had a lady come in yesterday, raving about how you made her son's day. Great job giving them a golden experience. That's it, friends. Stay tuned, something tells me episode 3 is just around the corner. You know how it is, some customers never take a day off. Story 4. So, this story happened on July 8, 2020. Me and my dad have decided that we will go shooting at a nearby range. We have a gas pistol, which in our country you don't need a license to have. Now, this pistol can only shoot blank or gas cartridges, but we also have a special attachment to the barrel that allows us to shoot a flare, pyro, etc. So we went there, shot a few pyros and flares, and then when I just loaded a new flare, about 20 feet away from us appeared our entitled lady and her humble kid. The kid looked like 11 and the Karen was about 40. So, they approach us from the back, and I hear the typical "excuse me," and I just tell myself in the head, "Oh God, it's happening." The conversation follows. "Yes. Could you please let my kid shoot?" Now, we have some restrictions about guns. 1. You must be at least 15 to shoot the gun. 2. For you to be able to shoot the explosives from the gun, you must have paperwork, which my dad has. I'm sorry, but I can't let him shoot. He's too young for that. No, he's not. He is 17. Mum, let them go. We will rent one right there. And do you even have the paperwork to shoot explosives from it? No, but you do, right? Dad rolls his eyes at this. Karen gets angry and yells, "Just give me the gun." No, and you don't even have the paperwork. Fine, I'll take it myself. She grabs the gun from my hand and pulls the trigger. The flare went off right on my t-shirt. I put the fire down and shout for security. When Karen realizes what she did, she grabs the flare box and bolts from the range going to the forest. Her kid just stands there frozen. Then comes the security guard. He asks me, "Are you okay?" Yeah, just the shirt is a bit ashed. Where did she go? Into the forest. Well, this range has to our pleasure a kennel. There are 2 dogs which are trained to find guns and people. This is because the people have been trying to sneak out with guns or ammo. My dad is an off-duty officer, so he gets the dog and the security guard, and they go to find her. Her kid and I go behind them. After about 15 minutes of searching, the security guard spots her hiding in a bush. Look, she is right there. He unleashes the dog, and it runs to the bush where Karen is. And just before the bush, Karen raises and shouts, "Stay away, you jerk." And she shoots the dog. The dog howled in pain as the explosive pyro exploded in its face. The security guard yells, "Hands up." Karen is right then tackled to the ground, apprehended, and later charged for assault, stealing, and injuring a police dog. At the court, she gets a total of 15 years in prison. Me and my dad then returned home, grabbed an gun, and we went shooting tin cans until it was evening. And that's the end. Story 5. Backstory. 25 years ago, my aunt passed away when I was a baby, leaving my 2 cousins who were both in their early 20s alone to fend for themselves. My grandparents, who were very wealthy, put a clause in their will that grandkids will receive half of their share of inheritance if a parent passes before the children reach the age of 30, and then the other half when my grandparents eventually passed. Both my cousins received a very sizable inheritance coupled with the money they got from selling my aunt's house. The younger of the 2 paid off her college loans and was able to buy property. She still lives on the same plot of land. The older sibling blew all of his money within 6 years. He was back to living in a condo, working as a police officer. Everyone in our small family knew he had a substance issue, so he was barely making ends meet with his officer salary and buying copious amounts of drugs. The next 4 years, my cousin went to rehab 3 times, sponsored by my grandparents. He sobered up after getting his girlfriend, now wife, pregnant. Absolutely wretched woman. She saw my grandparents as payday and essentially baby-trapped my cousin, thinking it was her ticket. Within 7 years, they had 3 kids, so she is locked in tight. She's a nurse, and with 3 kids around, they always needed a little boost. Guess who they would always ask? You got it, my grandparents. Being the kind spirits they are, they always lended a hand. My father, mother, sister, and I got sick of it very quickly. My grandmother unfortunately passed away when I was 17, leaving my grandpa as the last remaining. I was undoubtedly my grandfather's favorite among the grandkids, which left a real sore spot in the mouth of my cousin and his wife. I had 2 more years at home before college, so I lived with my grandpa to keep him company and help take care of him. My cousin and his wife hated this, so much so that whenever they came to visit, and I was not home, they would send their 3 gremlins into my room to destroy it. My room had double doors, so it couldn't be locked. This was the start. The longer I lived there, the more they would mess with me. My cousin even went as far to place one of those little mechanical noisemakers in the cabinet in my room, the ones that play sounds at random intervals that make you think you're insane. Thankfully, my German Shepherd would always hear it, and after a week or so she finally found it. They did this to distance me and deter me from taking care of Grandpa so they could swoop in and be the heroes. This continued until one of the kids found my gun. By this time, I was 18 and in the possession of a firearm. I use quotations because my grandfather has guns, but cannot aim and shoot them anymore due to arthritis and nerve degeneration. So when I moved in, he placed all the weapons in my hands, should the need of self-defense arise. But should he see them out for any reason other than cleaning, there would be hell to raise. Being very well trained with guns and having a sense of pride in defending my home, I took this responsibility very seriously. I always kept a handgun in a locked container in my nightstand with the key on a high shelf out of reach from the gremlins. One fateful day, I am out getting my grandfather's food. When I come home and my older cousin, his wife and my grandfather are staring at a gun on the table. It was my gun that I kept in the lockbox. It was loaded and had a bullet chambered. I always keep a magazine in the lockbox, but never load it into the gun. The lockbox was nowhere to be seen. My cousin claimed one of the children found the gun and was playing with it. I was 100% certain that he either found the key or broke the lockbox open to get to it and load it. As a 6-year-old would not be able to reach a key I could barely grab, figure out what it was to load my gun and chamber it. I tried my best to explain what my cousin had said was nonsense and that I never keep my firearms loaded in the house. But my cousin, who is a cop, scolded me on gun safety and threatened to have me arrested if I didn't leave and hadn't arrested me yet, because we're family. I was asked to collect my belongings and go back to my parents. My cousin had won, or so he thought. The next day, I apologized to Grandpa and explained to him there was no way one of the kids could have gotten the key. He agreed with me, and he apologized, but he thought it's best if I move out until things cool down, and once they do, I would be welcome back home. Our relationship was a little fractured due to disinformation provided by my cousin. A month later, my grandfather died of a heart attack at 86. I was devastated. I was just beginning to get back into rhythm with him and rebuilding the trust that was somewhat shattered. To this day, I am still unsure of what kind of man he saw me as due to my cousin. Immediately, my cousin and his wife began sucking up to my dad. As they had sealed payday with Grandpa, it was time to move on to the uncle. This persisted for a month or two. I wouldn't stand for it. Then came time for the will. My grandfather's lawyer read out the will to me. My father, mother, and sister in our home. Our 2 cousins would be briefed individually on their share of the estate, per my grandparents' requests. Then the miracle line in the will comes to fruition. If anyone attempts to claim any part of the estate that is not assigned to them, they forfeit any assets they are supposed to receive and will be divided equally among the remaining family members. This was basically their way of saying, if you try to claim more than you're given, you get nothing. My father is supposed to receive every piece of physical property from my grandparents, as he is the only remaining child aside from 2 or 3 items he set aside for me. The revenge. I hatched my plan. I called my cousin and told him all of Grandma's jewelry was to be donated to a charity auction. Grandma's collection of gems and medals was extensive to say the least, so a charity event wouldn't care if a few pieces didn't make it right. It was a lure of gargantuan proportions that my greedy cousin could not resist. He bit right on it and headed over to my grandparents' house as soon as possible, determined to snatch up as much as he could. A handful would send his kids to college. Regardless of what I said, the jewelry was never going to go to him anyways, so his actions were purely his own since none of it was destined to be his. Coincidentally, Dad was on his way with the lawyer to my grandparents' house to overlook everything. Formality stuff. According to my dad's testimony, my cousin had 3 shoeboxes worth of Grandma and Grandpa's jewelry piled on the kitchen counter ready for loading into his car. My dad and the lawyer stood in the kitchen, wondering why it was all there when my cousin walked in from my grandparents' bedroom with a 4th and final shoebox. The jig was up, and he put 2 and 2 together that I set him up. Which was true. But there was no penalty against me for exploiting my cousin's greed, so he would screw himself over. It's worth noting that between the 18 years from my aunt's death and my grandpa's death, their wealth had increased several times over, so my cousin felt cheated and expected to receive just as much as my sister and I, despite receiving half of his already and blowing it. Throughout this whole ordeal, his younger sister, my other cousin, has not had a problem at all and is still weeping over Grandpa's death like the rest of us. However, just like that, my cousin lost enough money in the course of 30 minutes that made him contemplate his sanity. Over greed. My cousin's wife apparently filed for divorce a few weeks later. We haven't heard from him in nearly 6 years, as he is all but disgraced now. Story 6. To summarize, my mother-in-law parked across the road from my neighbor's driveway. They started losing their minds as they believed it to be their property. This led to some shouting and of course a call to the boys in blue. So, as you can probably guess, yes, the driveway overlords did indeed phone the police. After her threats, we waited around waiting for my mother-in-law to be shipped away to the big house for committing the ultimate crime. Parking on a public street. I know, please try to hold judgment. However, like most close-knit streets, our other neighbors came out to see what all the fuss was about, and oh, did we get the gossip. It turns out we aren't the only people she's complained about. Social carers for the elderly, visitors for other houses, council workers, and even people who live on the street have all received notes and stern warnings from our delightful neighbors about our property. Although we were the lucky ones who finally pushed them over the edge. Well, they finally arrived. We can see their house from our window, so it was prime viewing. Then lady of the driveway came running out of the house, clutching a mug of what I can only guess is the tears of orphan children. They went into her house and closed the door, and so we waited, praying, hoping that they would come across to get our side of the story. Well, our wish was granted. But let me tell you, it was so much sweeter than we could have imagined. After watching the officer poking his head out the door like a meerkat, trying to figure out where the car was that was blocking their driveway, she gave him a hand and pointed to my mother-in-law's car parked across the street. This poor fella looked more confused than a drunk with a calculator. He eventually went back inside before heading over to our house, and that's where the real fun began. He came to our door, and we greeted him with a customary "Hi, what can we do for you, officer?" Here is the following conversation from what I can remember. Officer, good morning. We received a complaint about a car from this property blocking a driveway. My mother-in-law, hey there, yeah, we've been expecting you. Officer, are you the resident here? Mill, no, my son and daughter-in-law are, but it's my car that's been reported. The silver one across the street from their house. Officer, so, I'm having trouble understanding the issue. Was your car parked across their driveway? Mill, nope, it's been parked in the same space since I got here. Officer, well, your neighbor is claiming you blocked their car in their drive and were trespassing. Mill, oh, we know. She's been leaving notes on my cars and others in the street. She's been claiming that the entire section of the road is part of her personal driveway. You can ask the other neighbors. Officer, what notes? Has she asked you to move? Me, kind of. She told us and the rest of the neighbors that they would try not to hit our cars. Officer, what do you mean? Me, she's been accusing us all of parking in her driveway, across the street from her house on the public road. I even have a photo of where the car was parked a few hours ago. I showed him the photo, making sure to point out the time and date it was taken, and he just shook his head. He asked if there was anything else he should know before dealing with the matter. We were more than happy to fill him in on how she came to my door to stamp her feet in disapproval. throwing all the aggressively condescending, "It's illegal, sweethearts," she could our way. He asked if we felt threatened. I said no, but I wasn't happy that she was yelling at me while holding my baby. He said he understood, and we encouraged him to talk to the neighbors to get a full picture of what's going on. So, that's exactly what he did, and oh boy, it was all so much worse than I thought. For them. In our street, news travels fast. We're gossipy little jerks. We even have our own street WhatsApp group. Yeah, I know it's kind of sad, but we're all friends. Lockdown really brought us together. The officer did in fact make his way down the doors, and they were all more than happy to grasp them in after all their griping. It turned out that not only had they been harassing other people for parking near their home, but they had also been witnessed exiting the car looking a little wobbly. Wobbly as in 3 sheets to the wind, drunk as a fart. One can only assume this is why he needs 20+ feet to reverse into his drive. His wife, the lady of the driveway and pain in my life, has been spreading rumors that other people were having affairs. However, the piece de resistance was revealed to us when the officer came back to our house. When the officer asked about our trespassing on her property, she told the police officer I trained my cat to do her business in her plant pots. My huge, fluffy and attitude-fueled kitty had been having his morning poop in her begonias. His name is Stanford, and he is renowned in our street for being a sassy little jerk, sitting on top of cars, sneaking into people's houses and sleeping on their beds, and of course, tormenting dogs. I have never been prouder of him. In the end, the officer went back to her house, and from what we can tell told her to stop being a FUD, and if they were caught drunk driving, they would be arrested. Any more notes or coming to people's doors, and they could be charged with harassment due to the volume and nature of the events. Essentially, they were told to get a grip, and the officer went off to attend to actual crimes. Now the neighbor parks across the street from his driveway in protest, and the rest of the street accommodates by parking directly in front and behind him, as is our right by law. I hope my cat held eye contact while he was pooping on your plants.